Welcome to another episode of Civic Cipher. I'm your host, Ramses Ja.
They call me Q Ward, but my name is Quentin. But Quentin is, not easy to say. People call me Quentin and Quincy. So I just go with Q. So when you hear Q Ward, it's not a stage name. It's my actual initial and last name.
Yes, indeed.
I just want the people to know that.
All day.
I wasn't trying to be cool.
And, today we're back to talk to you, hopefully, about some things that we can do to make the world a little bit better, safer, more equitable. In true to form, we're going to have our conversations about things that are going on in the world, as we typically do here on Civic Cipher. But the thing is, today we have a special guest in the building with us. This is somebody that I've really wanted to come up on the show for a long time, and he's such a busy person. I've heard him speak a handful of times, enough times to make me wish I was able to hear him speak more. And it just so happens to be the case that we both are on the NAACP's Political Action Committee. And so this is a person it's been a long time coming, being able to plug in with such a profound thinker and speaker. And I'm sure there's a whole list of accolades. I would love to hear all about them. But Patrick C. Brown is with us today. So welcome to the show.
Yo, thanks for having me. You make me sound like, I need to get a book deal. Or
You do.
a publicist or something. I'm just I like to keep things simple. I try and roll in silence. I try and, speak my truth and, get people to think about stuff. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, this is the place to have the types of conversations that we are going to have today. And so I appreciate you. And then a little later on in the show, we're going to have to talk a little bit about some of the voter suppression initiatives that have taken center stage in, the legislature and so forth. And I think that you're perhaps a bit more familiar with the goings on in that arena than either me or Q. And so we would love to hear your thoughts on that and, of course, educate folks on what we can do to empower ourselves and fight against those voter suppression initiatives. But first order of business, big news this week is the trial of his name doesn't even deserve to be said, but I have to say it so you know who I'm talking about. His name is Derek Chauvin, something like
Chauvin, something like that.
Okay. This is the officer who has been tried. He's being tried for murder, right? And the person who was responsible for snuffing the life of George Floyd out. Now, I'll be honest. You probably know a little bit more about what's going on with the trial, Q. So how about you?
Unfortunately,
So talk me through what's happened so far.
Can we break down the charges? I know I think that really sends the message home to what this man did.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. And before we get to the specific charges, I want people to understand why I said unfortunately.
Okay.
Because that might seem obvious. Right, it's a trial of a black man that was murdered. Maybe that's what people thought I meant. But unfortunately, because watching the trial causes you to relive and re-experience the trauma that all of us, I think, across the world collectively experienced last year when George Floyd was murdered. And voluntary trauma is I don't really subscribe, except because of what we do. My professional responsibility means
You have to.
One of us needs to be paying attention specifically to what's going on with this trial. And I have to be honest, I wish it was Ramses, because Ramses is the hopeful, optimistic side of this coin that we are. And unfortunately, the more progress we make, the more we realize that we have so much further to go. And part of this trial for the murder of George Floyd with Officer Derek Chauvin, and I'm not sure that I'm pronouncing his name correctly, is you listen to the defense and you think that they were trying to prove the guilt of George Floyd instead of the innocence of their own client. And far too often in this country, that's the case. There's a black victim of violence by far too often a white officer, and the defense spends most of their resources on shining the light on the worst parts of this victim's life in effort to justify and or sway emotionally the jury of quote unquote peers. So it's a hard trial to experience, to watch, to pay attention to, because there's this lingering feeling of mistrust with me personally, where I'm like, justice won't be served here. And I really don't like that that's how I feel. But I've seen this movie a lot of times, and I sit and wait for the post-credit scene like a Marvel movie, waiting for the the good part to happen, or that can't be it. And far too often, there is no post-credit scene. The movie goes off, the credits roll, it's over. Another person that wasn't found guilty, or even when found guilty, right? Because even once a person is convicted, they have to be sentenced. The sentences are really light,
relatively speaking.
You know what I mean? And sometimes, you know, the state or the city or the government can't even find just reason to press causes. I mean, to press charges, even when we have video evidence.
I want to say something. You know, there's when in Ferguson, a few years ago, there was this, similar to what you said, there was this almost this effort to make Mike Brown seem like he was this thug, gang member, whatever, as though that warrants his death, or that justifies the the fear that the officer experiences. And these are supposed to be the brave, and and so forth. And far too often, especially coming from an environment like the one that I was born into, again, which is Compton, California, I'm able to recognize that people are these are, most of the time, they're just normal people, and it's just very unfortunate to see that the defense is, well, let's make the person who can't say their piece, the person who's lost their life, look like they deserve to die, or that the murder was justified. And I think that further reinforces this idea that Black lives don't matter, which has kind of been a part of the conversations, or really a part of the tapestry of this country since its inception. We're just disposable, and that's just kind of what happens. It's sad, but it probably deserved it.
And what's sickening about this trial, and I mean, we could go down the list. I mean, I'm not going to ask anybody to pull out any IDs, but I think I'm probably maybe the older of the three of us here. And I mean, for me, I clearly remember the Rodney King beating.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I was high school and watching that on TV. And what's crazy about that is we were supposed to play in a basketball tournament in California. Mm-hmm. And that got canceled because of the LA riots. And so, it's really interesting seeing just the different attitudes. My Caucasian teammates were mad because our California trip was done. And why always be like burning down California? We were supposed to go to Disneyland, we play ball and all this kind of stuff. We were going to the Forum, it was pre-Staples Center and everything. But all of my Black teammates and myself and our parents, we just had this look of like, this, it's like another day in America.
Sure.
But we were hopeful because this stuff has been happening since, before any of us were here,
Yeah.
before our grandparents,
Yeah.
before our grandparents. But we were hopeful because we got a video. We're not making this up.
Yeah, I remember
We've
that.
got proof. And then they all got off.
Yeah.
Now they did a federal trial and everything, but ultimately they never really saw the punishment. And what really what hurts my heart and angers me is the fact that it's a viable defense to play to all the racial, racist, white supremacist stereotypes about black men.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at some of the stuff with the witness, because I saw the video of the one guy, I believe he's the EMT, the brother, and they were playing like, "Were you angry?" You called, I don't know what the rules are for what I can, about the language. So I'm gonna play it. I'm gonna go G-rated, but
yeah, please.
Okay. But you called him all these derogatory terms and whatnot. And my whole thing is, if you're watching somebody die, you got to be a dead human being inside not to be angry.
Sure.
I mean,
it's upsetting.
I watched that video because I said, I watched it because I said I had to be a witness, a witness to this man's death, and I was just angry. So I can imagine being there live, seeing it happen.
Yeah, and you're present for it.
Right,
You get
and
the
seeing
energy.
yourself in that.
Yeah.
And I think what I've tried to explain to white people, folks who are less likely to experience this type of violence, is that you have to understand that when this happens, for Freddie Gray, for Oscar Grant, for George Floyd, we see that could easily be us. The three of us sitting here could easily be
That
George
person.
Floyd.
Easily.
And then you take it a step further. I think of the young kids like Tamir Rice.
Mm-hmm.
I've got an 11-year-old son, and I see Trayvon Martin. I see my son's eyes. I have two sons. I see Tamir Rice's eyes, and I think if my boys go down to the end of the block to go play basketball, is somebody going to not see an 11-year-old and an 8-year-old? Are they going to see grown men?
Yeah.
And
Grown black men specifically.
Right, exactly. Grown black men and take their lives.
Or put them in a position to where they have to
Right.
justify their existence.
Yeah.
Or face death, because some folks, they might not engage directly, but they'll call the police. Hey, I saw someone walking down the street. He looks like he doesn't belong here. And then the police show up. And history has shown us that oftentimes it's the police that escalate the situation. The police show up with the weapons. The police show up, with the capacity to kill. And this is critical.
I'm sorry. Let me put
Yeah,
this
go
point,
ahead.
because you're on the right path with this. But let me throw this in.
Sure, please.
The police are capable of not doing that because we see it happen when
the person's not
the
black.
individual is
Not black.
Is not black.
Yeah.
Let's go to Wisconsin. Dude had a semi-automatic weapon
Yeah.
in a highly charged environment. Lots of stuff, you can say every indicator where a policeman should be on, red alert. Yet they let him walk by, first of all, and then when there was, somebody got shot or whatnot, they were able to control themselves.
Yeah.
I've witnessed, especially when I go back to my, my days when I used to go to clubs and, when I lived that life and whatnot.
Sure.
I've witnessed white dudes say all sorts of stuff to cops under the influence, call them everything but their name, and they can show self-control. But then, officer, this is my house. I'm the homeowner. Well, I need to see some ID. Could you step out? Make sure you show your hands. Move slowly.
And we're going to talk about that. I want you to keep that in mind. We're going to talk about
okay.
that when we talk about. So there was an incident that happened in, I want to say it was Arkansas, about how the interactions with police they tend to be very aggressive when it comes to black males specifically, but black people, and then to a larger extent, all people of color. I don't want to look past our Hispanic brothers and sisters in this moment because I do recognize that it happens to them as well.
Yes.
But before we get there, and I do want to talk about that at length, you mentioned something and I thought that it was really important to mention this, or to discuss this right now. There's this narrative that exists on the other side for people that say, well, this is one person that died at the hands of a police officer. Of course, there's some bad apples. There's some people that take it too far. But for the most part, the policing works. It keeps us safe, right? And I understand that in their reality, that is their truth. And we have to allow for that. You know, we have to challenge it, but we have to allow for it to exist in the first place. And so we want to establish that first. These people oftentimes will then take it a step further, which, you know, we will all agree is pretty flagrant on their part. And they'll say, well, why aren't you as upset with what's going on in Chicago where people are murdered all the time? Or what about black on black crime? That takes more black lives, quote unquote, than police violence and so forth. And I think that a lot of times people miss that what we're trying to do is reshape the narrative, reshape the value of black life because of images were shown on television and the culture at large. And there's something, and when you were talking about the Rodney King riots in Los Angeles, which I was there for that, there's something that a lot of folks don't mention, or they don't really consider, and that's that if there is a, quote, black on black crime that takes place, black on black crime is not a real thing.
It's a myth.
Any more than white on white crime. That doesn't exist. You know, that you're around people that look like you for the most part. Your family members look like you, and so you know what I mean.
Most crimes in general are based on proximity,
right,
not
that's it.
Color.
That's it. And
you're not going to go clear across town to rob somebody. You're going to rob the person that's closest to you.
Yeah, if you need, you need convenience in those situations. But, this narrative has been established and allowed to exist and grow and fester to where folks can kind of hide behind this and say, well, listen, I don't need to support Black Lives Matter. Of course, all lives matter, and black people need to figure out what their values are before they come for our police. We support our police.
It's gaslighting.
Which again is a sensible thing when you don't know any better. So I don't want to attack
in a
these
vacuum.
people. Right, in a vacuum, absent all the rest of the facts. But the thing that I like to bring up in situations like that is that if there is a, quote, black on black crime that happens, we demand justice. We demand a trial. Usually the person is found. If the police are doing their job, the person goes to court, has his day in court. And if there's a conviction, the person is put away. And all too often what we see with these police shootings is that they're high profile. So again, shaping the national narrative one way or the other. And what is infinitely more important is that there is no justice. They're not even ever really on trial, as you mentioned in Los Angeles in '92.
Sometimes they don't even bring charges.
Yeah, I mean, it's rare. It's rare to even get to the stage. Many times,
sure,
we've got incidents that happen in Maricopa County that never saw the inside of courtroom.
Yeah, I know.
The Maricopa County, attorney's office declined to even pursue any charges.
Absolutely.
I mean, and it's not even recently. This has happened over years of police misconduct, violence, death, things of that nature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And so, what happens is, just sticking with the example that we used earlier in Los Angeles, where there's video evidence of gross police misconduct, a blatant disregard for human life. And I would challenge anybody listening to my voice to reimagine Rodney King as a dog. See all these police officers beating a dog. How upset does that make you? And does that make you more upset if it's a dog? Because then you need to search inside yourself. If it's a dog, do you demand, or do you understand why there were riots? Because these police officers got off. Or now, does it make sense? Because I would bet that is the truth. And that's all we want, is just when these high profile cases happen. I'm gonna get to you, Q. When these high profile cases happen, with all the cameras on, we're able to kind of contribute to the storyline of black people in America, that what we're doing is we're taking advantage of, or there's potentially an opportunity to say black lives do matter. There is justice in the world. Our lives are worth something. And when they're taken from us needlessly and senselessly, that there are consequences. And that's really it. So you can pay out and say, yeah, it was a wrongful death. You can do all that sort of stuff. No. Consequences, justice. And this is why this cry has been so loud now. I'm so sorry. I had to get that off. Go ahead.
No, I'm glad you got that off, because that was important. It was actually what you said that woke up something in me.
Sure, let's hear it.
Before I move on, I want to say this man's name. Donald Williams was the gentleman that the defense attorney tried to paint as this angry black man.
Okay.
Right? So that the jury and the people watching could lose sympathy for him.
Yeah. You see?
The cop was so uncomfortable at this guy screaming at him that he couldn't pay attention to the person that he was murdering at the time. But the thing about the dog, and the thing about even him and the trial in general, that sparked something very, very personal for me. And I've not ever shared this outside of a very small circle. My little brother, Vincent Berry, is here with us. Been in my life for 35 to 37 of my 39 years. He's one of the rare people who were in my life. We were in each other's lives when our fathers passed. And I've not shared this part of my story out loud before. But when my father passed away, after not being in my life for most of my life, him and my mom divorced when I was about 3 years old. And that's why Vincent's father meant so much to me, because he took up some of that responsibility along with, William Reveley and John Reese. I wept. Like, as aggressively as you can cry, with as much emotion, with as much feeling for loss. And my older brother came home and didn't understand why I was crying. And when he found out, he was angry, because my older brother watched my mom be abused by my father. And in his mind, my father did not deserve for me to be hurt, for me to weep, for me to feel his absence. So in effort to make me not feel that way, my brother told me every bad thing that he could possibly think about my father. And when you were talking about how people will respond if it was a dog, and you were talking about the way that they criminalize and the way they want to make George Floyd look like he doesn't deserve justice. He does not deserve for you to feel sorry for him. He's not your martyr, as Candace Owens so proudly proclaimed on the internet.
Ew.
You have to make him seem less worthy of sympathy and justice and fair, sound-minded people to think something wrong happened. So let's paint the worst possible picture of him, because the whole world is crying, the whole world is angry, and people are in the streets. Oh my God, we have to stop this. We have to show these people that the man that was murdered must be less than that, less than a dog even. So he doesn't deserve your anger and your tears.
There's I'm going to get the quote wrong, but there's something that once upon a time Malcolm X said, and it had to do with, so I'm going to paraphrase, but it had to do with having to keep your composure as a black man while fighting for an equitable go at life in the United States of America. Because at the moment at which you lose your composure, you lose your support, your sympathy, everything like that, empathy from other folks. And I think that it illuminates just how tricky it is to just have an even playing field, no advantages, nothing like that. And it's just so interesting how, Like, why in the world were we born into this world? It's such a weird thing, isn't it? Anyway, that's just me. If you're just tuning in to Civic Cipher, I'm your host, Ramses Ja.
They call me Q Ward, and that just so happens to be my name.
Yes, indeed. Special guest in the building today, Patrick C. Brown, my committee member from the NAACP Political Action Committee. And we're going to talk about some voter suppression initiatives in just a minute. But first, to piggyback off of what we were talking about a bit earlier, I saw something this week, and forget it. I wept too, man. I cry all the time. I'll be honest with you. I'm a human being, and I feel stuff, It just happens. I have a beating heart in my chest, and I love my family. And if you're listening to my voice, as weird as it sounds, I love you too. I want you to do well. I want us all to do well. That's just how I look at the world. If you don't like it, sue me. But I have a beating heart. I feel things. I've always been that way. You know this, Q.
You have always been that way, sir.
Yeah, man. And I love loving. I do. I think it's the right way to be. But unfortunately, the capacity to feel often catches up with me. And so the story I'm about to share, I won't be able to convey the experience, the emotion, the right way, because I understand that if you're listening to my voice, you may not have the same context. The world may not look and feel the same way to you. But I do want to try to put you in my shoes when I saw this video. So as you mentioned earlier in the show, Q, we do have to make sure that we're engaging using our social media, and we have to make sure that we're following the news so that we know what to discuss when we do our show. So this past week, which, by the way, rest in peace, Nipsey Hussle. It was the anniversary of his passing. As someone who was born in California, that hit close to home, so I have to say that one.
Compton, California, to be exact.
Yes, indeed. Love what he stood for. He was a good guy. I was able to meet him a few times, shake his hand, and hang out with him. Anyway, saw a video. This video was of, I want to paint the picture for you. And feel free to check out on our Instagram or our Facebook, just search at Civic Cipher. You'll be able to see the video yourself. But what it is it's a police camera, a dash camera. And there's a man standing next to a U-Haul truck. The man is... Have you seen this?
I saw it, yeah.
You saw the
I saw it on Instagram, yep.
Okay,
yep.
Okay. So it, for me, was heartbreaking. I'll explain why. So the man standing next to his U-Haul truck, he was driving the truck. I guess he was trying to exit the freeway. This was in Arkansas. Yeah, looks like. So he's trying to exit the freeway. He kind of misses the turn a little bit, does a little squiggle or swerve or something like that. It's a big truck. And the police see him. They get behind and pull him over. So he's on the kind of shoulder of the highway. And this is where the dash cam picks him. Now, I'm going to talk you through this because it's important. The man is wearing dreads and he's got a beard. He's an adult man standing there, and the officer is talking to him.
An adult black man.
Indeed. And, there's another thing that happens where people say, if you just do what the officer says, blah, 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 this sort of thing. And I think that further illuminates how, remember you mentioned earlier, Patrick, that some people will be able to interact with the police and kind of push their tongue all the way out. Those people often tend to be less melanated.
That is true.
And the police will just kind of keep their composure. But when this man in this video, and pretty much every video I've ever seen, demands, some dignity, the minimum, a modicum of respect, it's seen as threatening. It's seen as like, that Malcolm X quote that I paraphrased earlier, that, he's losing his composure, and now all of a sudden the empathy and the sympathy flies out the window. So anyway, in this video, the officer's like, hey man, if you had anything to drink, you on drugs, anything like that? And the guy's like, no, not at all. He's like, well, you look a little nervous to me. And he's like, yeah, I'm nervous.
Of course.
Yes.
I look a little nervous, sir.
And there's a police officer in front of me.
I'm in Arkansas.
Yeah.
I'm black. I'm pulled over by police. Have you been watching the news for the past forever?
400 years? Yeah. So anyway, the officer takes exception to that, and you can see his temperature change in the video. And the officer says, well, listen, man, let me search the vehicle. And the guy's like, listen, man, I don't give you permission. I don't give you consent.
Which is his right.
Yeah. There's no reason, nothing that you've ascertained from this interaction would warrant you escalating it and going into the vehicle. I have places to be. I'm sure you have real crime to fight. If I swerved, we can talk about that. But anything else, unless you have a real reason, And this is kind of the energy that was in the video. It wasn't anything like no one was yelling, raising a voice. The guy was very respectful, but he was kind of standing his ground. Like, no, that's not fair. Which again, anyone with a little less melanin would have been able to get that off no problem, or it wouldn't have even come up in the interaction. The police wouldn't have initiated it. So the officer says, well, we can wait here until I get the dogs out. Don't say anything, Q. Don't say anything, Q. We can wait here until we get the dogs out. Actually, I want to say it. They'll get the dogs out, and then they'll say the dog indicated that we smell narcotics, and then they'll go in the truck anyway. That's what they do. That's been my experience 100% of the time.
The dog creates probable cause.
Exactly. Even if the dog doesn't, because there's nothing there. But we'll tell that story in just a second. I want to. This is my belief. I don't know that for sure, but
it's beyond belief with me.
Understand that the courts have ruled several times over that a police officer may use deception to further their investigation.
Sure.
So, I've been around police dogs. I've seen them work. I don't know a damn thing about them.
Yeah.
So I don't know what indicator or what clue or whatever it is. So the police officer is going to say, all right, the dog indicated that there's drugs in the car or whatnot. And so now I have probable cause
to do whatever they want. Yeah.
And what they're, and when you kind of follow the line of thinking, it's like, now I want you to react, to now give me an excuse to then feel that I am unsafe, that now I can, handcuff you, stack the charges, whatever comes next. And to that video, and I think one thing for the folks who are listening to understand is that, I'll go with my interpretation. My interpretation is that this officer wanted subservience, and this man was being a man. He wasn't getting outside of himself. He wasn't getting, hostile.
You talking funny to me, boy?
Exactly. Right. It was, why are you pulling me over? Valid question. Then it's like, we want to search him. Nah, I don't want you guys to search my car. And now it's, I can see the temperature changes as you, where it's like, okay, so now you're going to make me work, and I'm going to make you hurt.
Yeah. So with that in mind, this is the part where it became very troubling to me. So the man who with the dreadlocks, not the officer, pulls out his phone and he calls his father. It just so happens to be the case that his father is a circuit judge and
a practicing attorney.
Sure. Yeah. I forgot about that. So you can see him speaking to his father on the phone. He's holding the phone. It's not a video call, nothing like that. The officer asks him to lean over the front of the police vehicle so they can check his person or whatever. And the man is telling his father, okay, they're leaning me over the hood of the car. They're patting me down. And then the officer grabs his right arm and puts it behind his back, and he says, okay, they're holding my right arm. And then when they grab his left arm, he loses it. He doesn't do anything crazy, but emotionally he loses it.
He breaks.
He breaks.
Because loses it sounds like he went off. He did not.
He got emotional.
Yes.
Emotional. Thank you. Because
that broke him emotionally.
But I think it was like he was crying.
Yes.
Yeah, it was tears and everything. Yeah.
And what he said was, they're arresting me, Daddy. And even now, saying that out loud,
the way that our sons would say it to us,
it's so
not our grown selves, but our children would say it like that.
Could you imagine?
Adoniah, Grayson, Trey, they would say it to us like that.
They're arresting me, Daddy.
Daddy. with the full understanding that he's done nothing, and the fear being used against him. Just let us search you and we'll let you go, even though you haven't done anything and we have no probable cause to search or arrest you. But we know you're afraid. We know you're uncomfortable and that you would rather just go. So just let us do what we want. Don't have any dignity.
Submit.
Don't even have any. Submit to us and we'll let you go. And in that space of understanding that he'd done nothing to deserve what was happening to him, and that all of his fears and that nervousness they spoke of, justified in that moment, he broke.
I would, and this is not strictly relevant, but I want to say it. I had to bury my father. So I don't have anybody I could call. That means that I'm the person who gets that call. And it's inconceivable. They're arresting me, Daddy. Weeping, wailing. Grown son, full beard, dreadlocks. And then you can hear him on the phone saying, "Why would you arrest my son?"
Think about the terror, because I mean, I'm going to make an assumption that considering his father's background, he's well aware
of exactly what could happen.
And then, I think, we're all parents here.
Yes.
Imagine that your son is in a situation, and there is nothing you can do about it. But listen, that's the thing. It's not you're home, you're having dinner, and you discover something happened to my child. Mm-hmm. But now you get to
real time
listen.
Yeah, you're listening
as your child is
live.
in terror.
So, Q and I have been doing this show for some time. Real quick, I want to shout out Hot 98.3 in Tucson, because we're debuting in Tucson today. But
go Wildcats!
Yeah, go Wildcats!
Bear down, he says.
Much love to Tucson as well. But we've been doing the show for a while, and we were able to share this story once upon a time. It sounds very similar to the story that I just shared. So I want to go through it briefly so that if you're listening to my voice, you understand that there's a little bit of context here and a personal experience that's almost identical.
Yeah, one of many experiences, but specific to this one.
This one is specific.
Yes.
So, in short, what happened was once upon a time, Q and I flew to Miami to pick up a very nice Porsche. Q purchased a Porsche for his fiance, and we were going to drive it back on a road trip. The car was for the one that she wanted was in Florida, so we had to fly there to get it. We're driving back. Beautiful road trip. We're seeing all these states and having a good time. Car's brand new. We get into Mississippi. And Q really wanted to get out of Mississippi. We were in Alabama first, and then we went to Mississippi. So
Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, in that order.
Yeah,
you're running like the gauntlet.
Yeah, man. And it was night,
and this was at the height of what we've been dealing with.
Yeah,
so we're seeing signs, flags,
the Confederate flags, all that stuff. And a lot of the Trump trucks and all that sort of stuff, and not like in a way to support Trump, but in a way to intimidate us. That's how it was really. That's the way I remember it, because I've seen Trump trucks in where I live in Arizona, and it's just people who are proud of Donald Trump, I guess. But these were specifically to intimidate, like they would be alongside like other signs and verbiage, and we what did they say? Like we kill rap music, something like that. Had the word kill and rap music in the same sentence on a sign with a Donald Trump flag. It was like, whoa.
Not to take this off another direction, but what does it say that a political candidate, a president's name, former president's name, can be used in that fashion? I mean, as involved as I've been in politics, I cannot think of I don't remember somebody being able to say like, Reagan 1984 and, as a form to like, as like verbal, punches.
Yeah, that's crazy, man.
I love Barack Obama, but
Yeah.
I don't have a sticker on my car.
Yeah.
Or a flag on my yard.
Yeah. I got a T-shirt that I wear, when I march at the MLK parade, and that's about the only time it gets out the closet.
There you go. So anyway, we're in Mississippi. We're almost out of there. We're almost into Louisiana. Q's driving.
It's 3:00 in the morning.
It's dark.
It's no street lights, dark.
Yeah,
moonlight. That's all.
InTheCutRecords.com. We was out there, dark. Then those trees are real
Some
big.
unsolved mysteries type of stuff.
Oh yeah.
And the trees are so tall, the moonlight.
Yeah, you
doesn't
can't
come.
see anything.
So what happens is, in Arizona, there's grooves in the road that'll wake you up if you're drifting one side or another. But in Mississippi, the grooves are actually the white line. The line is the groove.
Yes, the grooves are not on the side of the road like here. They're in the. They divide the lanes.
So you're basically crossing over, and that's when you hit the groove.
Yes.
So if your tire touches it just a little bit, it'll make that loud noise. And so that happened, and the police were able to hear it, and so they get behind us and they pull us over. And as you mentioned, like being able to only listen to what's happening. So what happens is the police come to the car, and they start talking to Q. He was driving at the time. The car has a paper license plate. It's a new Porsche. And just interacting with Q, he says, "No, sir, I've never drank alcohol in my life.
Never tried a drug.
Never done a drug in my life.
And
And that's something that's true of me as well. Ramses has never tried a drug or never done alcohol.
Y'all lived a healthier life than I have, so I applaud you.
But the thing is, to be able to say that
and mean it,
that's the truth, So there was nothing beyond that. And of course, in talking to Q, you can tell, okay, this person is not intoxicated, is not inebriated. There wasn't a huge swerve. It was just about maybe 1 second or a half of a second worth of a noise. And then we explained, well, we're driving to Arizona. We didn't know that the lines are there. And that's just kind of a thing. We're changing the radio, whatever was happening. I don't even know if we said anything like that. But early on, they were able to determine that there was no inebriation in the equation. And so that should have been the end of it. Yeah. But would you mind stepping out of the car, please, sir? So now Q has to get out of the car. So what do? I go into panic mode and I pull out my phone, but I don't record it because they're going to do whatever they're going to do to Q. I know they're going to do it to me. So I go to Facebook Live. The problem is that I can't see Q out the back of the car because those police lights are so bright. So I'm just filming. And my phone is about to die because we were jamming the Outcast all through the South, and we were like that's just kind of our
road
thing.
trip. Yeah,
man, we were on our level. So what happens is, just like I predicted, the officer comes back to the car and asks for my ID. Now I'm still on Facebook Live, and now I have a good number of folks that have been able to see. Oh, there's police sirens. And remember the climate in the country at the time.
And remember what time it was.
Yeah, it's late at night. So it's real early out here in Phoenix.
No, even here it was late though. That's what made it even more scary. Like if it's 3 there, it's midnight here, 1 o'clock here.
Okay, something like that. Yeah. So there's hundreds of people looking at this.
Everybody's up. So yeah.
Right. And then the last thing that happens is he gives me back my ID and he says, "Can you step out of the car, please?" And I'm like, And then my phone dies. So everybody that's watching that now, these people are crying. These people are calling,
terrified.
All of my friends, my family, everyone was so worried, and that speaks to that helplessness that you experience when there's nothing you can do because you're on the other side of a phone call. Anyway, they pull us out of the car, and I'm giving you the quick and dirty version of the story. But once they pull us out of the car, they say, "Can we search the vehicle?" And we say, "Yes, please search the vehicle," because we're not moving a house full of stuff like the gentleman was in Arkansas. It's a brand new car, so there's nothing to search. I think we might have had a backpack each.
And we don't want to start an adversarial relationship with a highway patrol officer and a state trooper or a sheriff at 3 o'clock in the morning in Mississippi.
Sure.
And y'all are from out of state.
Boom.
So yeah, we know our rights, but no, we're trying to get home to our babies.
We would rather not upset you right now.
Well, I mean, here's the thing with rights. I mean, knowing your rights and being able to live to make this case can be two different things.
Yes.
Because
What?
in that situation, it's you, it's the cops, and there's nobody else.
Sir, you can search the car, my shoes, my bag, this hat I have on, my pockets. What you need?
Listen, man, I got
The spare tire compartment.
Look at my ears.
Because this is a hybrid, there's a compartment that you might not know about. You can check that. If you look under there, it's right there, sir.
We got some unopened waters. Help
Yes,
yourself.
please.
So listen, so what they do is they get the dog, and they after he gives the flashlight and does the whole thing, they get the dog. So we're waiting out on the side of the road, terrified. I'm terrified. Q is fortunately playing a little cooler because he had a little bit more information than I did, because he was out talking to the officers already. But I was terrified because why in the world do I need to get out of the car? And I challenged them later. I was like, if Q was a 65-year-old privileged corporate executive driving the same car, and I was his, wife, a 45-year-old white female, blonde hair, blue eyed, would we be standing on the side of the road for 2.5 hours
45
while you bring
minutes
dogs
ago
to search the car? Or would the story have gone any different? And that was my charge to them. Anyway, they bring the dogs out, and you wouldn't believe me if I told you. So yeah, the dog indicated the presence of narcotics in the car. So we're gonna have to do a full search of the vehicle. Whoa, okay, we just got the car yesterday, and then long story short, the dog searches the car, and
then he searches the car.
He searches
thoroughly.
the car, puts the blue gloves on, goes through and everything like that, and then what he told us was that if the dog's nose is so sensitive that if somebody had a joint in their pocket
and brushed up against the car
or brushed against the car in a grocery store parking lot, and remember, we're driving down the highway at 75, 80 miles an hour across states, plural, since the last time we stopped, because those things are pretty good on gas. It was a hybrid. So but it just seems so like such a reach in it, and that's where my black folks have historically had a deep distrust of the whole judicial system, the political system, and of course policing
it's a
system.
whole, I mean, we could do a whole show on the history behind.
Oh
that,
yeah, of course. Yeah. But it wasn't a surprise, but it was kind of reaffirmed in our interaction that, okay, you just made that up. That doesn't even make any sense. First off, no one leaned against the car. It was on a car lot, and then we had it, and we've been with it ever since. And no one we've been around even does that. There's no way, and someone how likely is it that someone leaned against this car in a grocery store parking lot with a joint in their pocket, and then the smell stayed on the fender?
I mean, that is some high
to where a
weed.
or whatever, right? So it's so outlandish and outrageous that it again further at least told me that the mistrust that I have mistrust is too strong a word. I don't want this. Yeah, to really believe at face value what an officer says to me, especially if it sounds a little it doesn't really sound feasible. I kind of know what I'm looking at when I'm looking at it. And in that instance in particular, I don't believe it was a black and white thing as much as it was a policing of black people thing, because the officer, I want to be fair, the officer, what we found out later was he might have been half black. Maybe.
Both of those guys were black. And the reason why that's such a massive reveal is, once again, we were in Mississippi. This is a sheriff and a state trooper. It's 3:00 in the morning. And in Mississippi, the Mississippi draw sounds like the Mississippi draw.
It doesn't respect your race. It's so heavy.
Oh, yeah.
So before we can see them, because remember, flashlights and the big bright light on the police vehicle, we can't see. We can just hear.
Yeah.
So what Ramses spoke to before, there was some relief on my part, because when I got out of the car and looked and saw someone that looks like you, I didn't think I was going to die anymore.
But that doesn't mean we're out of the woods at all.
Right.
It just, okay, maybe it's not as mission critical as we once thought. So, again, if you're just tuning in to Civic Cipher, I'm your host, Ramses Ja.
They call me Q Ward.
And our guest today, Patrick C. Brown, a member of the NAACP Political Action Committee, and I do want to talk about these voter suppression initiatives. So real quick, let's frame what that is.
Okay, so let's talk about. I mean, voting has had a very interesting history in our country, and I guess to frame it, I want to take us back to the start. To the founding of America. So when you go back to George Washington, that era of time, not everybody could vote. So our country has never been all in on democracy and on voting, which is you could say the essence of democracy. And so, originally to vote, you had to be a white male and you had to own land.
Yeah.
So you can think if you're not a white male and you don't own land, then you don't vote. Now we can fast forward, through the years, and eventually, all white men could vote. And then, we said, okay, you don't have to own, land, things like that. Eventually, women would get the vote. Of course, that wouldn't be until like the 1920s. Actually, African American men would get the vote before any women, for the Native American community. And so, as you can, as you go through this, you can see that voting has always been an issue. Now, here's what is so crazy about voting. We live in a country where we desperately want people to be involved in their communities, in politics, things like that. But we also make it so difficult to do. But what's even worse is we gaslight and we tell people, your vote matters, voting is important. But then we tell them we say, the vote is so important, but we make it very, very difficult to actually do. And so what we're seeing basically post the 2020 election is that, one political party, y'all probably know what I'm talking about, the Republican Party, and this is not just Arizona, this is across the country, Georgia, Kansas just passed some crazy stuff, but we'll talk just about Arizona, is that with this election, they're now trying to change the game. And so a couple of items. Like I said, this could be a whole show in its own, but I'll keep it pretty simple here. In Arizona, we've enjoyed mail-in ballots. And now the acronym is PEVL. You may have heard that, but it's mail-in ballot, and we've had that since like about 96. And so it's pretty straightforward. You sign up on the permanent early voting list. That's what PEVL stands for, and basically you get a ballot for every election. As long as you don't move and don't update your information. If you move and you update your information, your ballot will find you. And this is for federal elections, state elections, local elections, all that. And it's worked really well because about 80% of the folks in Arizona love PEVL. And this is like across party lines. Everybody likes having that convenience because you can sit at home, you can fill out your ballot, you can pop it in the mail, you can take it to, the voting center, you can take it to, the county recorder's office, pop in their drop box, and you're good. In the last couple of years, technology is even better. You get a little text message when your ballot goes out. Once you fill out your ballot, it gets received a text message, hey, we've got your ballot. Your vote has been captured. All these great things. But what's interesting now is suddenly folks are having issues, or I'll say the Republicans are having issues with vote by mail. And so the first thing we're seeing a bill that wants to take the permanent out of permanent early voting list. So now the bill is, and I'll have to pull up my cheat sheet here. The bill is, I want to say it is SB 1485, and if y'all on Google, if I'm wrong, you guys will, I'm sure will let Ramses know, and I apologize. But,
it's okay.
But like I said, I just want to get to the heart of the information. So with this is how this would work is if this bill passes, and it's currently floating around in the state legislature. So as of today, I believe that it was supposed to go up for a floor vote in the House today. A couple amendments were to be added to the bill. And so ultimately what happened is that bill is going to be pushed to next week. So because they've broken for, because it's Good Friday, they're not going to do anything. But with PEVL, what happens is that if you don't utilize your mail-in ballot, meaning if you receive your ballot and you do not mail it back, then you can be removed from the list. Mm-hmm. And so now people may think that's not a big deal, but what a lot of people do is their ballots come to their home, they fill out their ballot, they take it and drop it off at the polling place on election day or a couple of days out, or they'll take it to the county recorder. So if you do that, you could then lose being off of Pebble. And what's really scary about this is people may not realize this until it's too late.
Sure.
And why this is, I think, this is really going to impact negatively, Black and brown communities, is that we already have an issue with having enough polling places or enough working equipment. Now, I want to be fair that in previous elections, we've been fortunate that there's been a good sense of equity. But you know what? If you have a lot of people voting, it's going to be lines and all thing goes with it. So now, if you don't use that, likely you may not vote, and you may not even know that you've been kicked off the list.
And this is just one.
Oh, this is
There's many.
There's many. Yes.
So here's the thing that I think it's important that helps frame this, and that's that people need to understand that the less votes or the less voting that actually takes place, the more it favors the Republican Party, historically speaking. And so the Republicans have an interest in suppressing votes across the board, because the less people that vote, the more people that vote, the more. We're a Democratic leaning country. It's just the voting system favors Republican outcomes.
And when it comes down to it is, in the here and now, Republicans win or they do better when the electorate is as small as possible.
Boom.
So, you could say common sense would be, if people aren't voting for you, that means they don't like your ideas. They don't like your policies. So it would make sense to then adjust what the people want. Instead, they're going the opposite direction, saying, no, what we're going to do is we're going to shrink that down.
Mm-hmm.
And so that means people of color, the elderly,
mm-hmm.
the folks who are disabled,
mm-hmm.
all the people who benefit this are now going to not vote.
So, and because this is just one example of this, and there are many others, I want to talk about what folks can do to challenges to combat this. Where can they go? Where's there more information? How can folks keep up with you, support you, follow you?
Sure.
And the much larger movement.
Okay, so I'm gonna give a shout out to a really great organization, because I think this is probably the easiest for y'all listening. There's a group called Progress Arizona. I'm working with those guys. They're amazing. They are in the trenches every day with this stuff. I mean, they're at the Capitol. I would follow Progress Arizona. They're on Instagram. They're on Facebook. They're on Twitter. And they also, they put this stuff out. They're also on YouTube. The YouTube channel is really great because they do a quick 2-minute video of all the things happening in the legislature each week. Very digestible. Now, as for these type of bills, because of where we're at, you need to contact your state legislator. You need to call that person up. Now, if you don't know who it is, I'll just go to azledge.org. And then at that point, you just need to type in your information. It'll tell you, who's representing you. Call that person, email that person. Because at this point now they're getting to the stage where the vote's going to happen.
All right. So this will become especially useful to Black folks if you are a non-Black person, an ally to Black people, because in those spaces, perhaps your voice may carry a little bit more weight. And so if you've been wondering what more can you do to support your African-American brothers and sisters, your Latino brothers and sisters, there's an opportunity here for you to reach out to your legislator and take action against these voter suppression initiatives. But that's about all the time we have for this week. Once again, want to thank you for tuning in to Civic Cipher. I'm your host, Ramses Ja.
They call me Q Ward.
Be sure to hit the website, civiccipher.com, to download this and any previous shows. Please submit topics, anything you want us to discuss. Follow our social media at Civic Cipher, and don't forget to donate if you can. And until next week, y'all. Peace.